All right, friends, it's time to give you loyal listeners a discount on protein powder. You may or may not know, but I launched my very first protein powder 2 years ago. It's a grass-fed beef isolate with only 3 ingredients: grass-fed beef, either organic cacao or organic vanilla, and organic monk fruit. Now, if you don't want any of the added flavor and sweeteners, you can also just get unflavored. And no matter what flavor you choose, you're getting over 23 grams of protein per scoop, which is going to keep you full and satisfied between meals. I love starting my day with a Fab4 smoothie and breaking my fast with that much protein. It makes a serious difference in my cravings and blood sugar balance the rest of the day, and I've seen it with my clients as well. Now, I never thought I'd own a product company, but when I got pregnant with Sebastian, I realized the majority of protein powders were chemically extracted or enzymatically extracted, and I wanted to use heat and water only. I wanted minimal ingredients because we don't need those emulsifiers, fillers, or added vitamins, minerals, and probiotics. All of those additions increase the chances that it's not going to work for your body, whether it be bloating, digestion issues. I just wanted pure, clean protein to keep you full and satisfied so you could build the most delicious Fab4 smoothie. And I have to say, I'm pretty proud of the flavor. If you take a look at our reviews on Amazon, you'll see 5-star reviews for flavor. And that is key, because if you don't love your Fab4 smoothie and you don't love drinking your protein powder, you're not going to do it. It won't become a habit, and it's consistency that outpaces everything. So if you're here and you're listening and you want to give our protein powder a try, use the code PODCAST5 for $5 off your order. And let me know if you love it. My favorite ways to apply this protein powder is in my Fab4 smoothie, making freezer fudge, making chocolate milk, making hot chocolate, and throwing the unflavored into all my kids' baked goods. So let me know how you use it. Let me know if you love it, and share this podcast deal with your friends. Hey guys, welcome back to the show. Just a couple of announcements before we get started with today's guest. First, the Be Well by Kelly protein powder is finally available on Amazon. So head on over and snag vanilla, chocolate, or unflavored for your Fab4 smoothie. Secondly, tomorrow, Thursday, July 16th at 2 p.m. Eastern, IIN is hosting a live open house. It's virtual, it's a webinar, and it's going to give you a little insight into the IIN's curriculum, their learning center, and I'll show you how becoming a health coach can enable you to live your healthiest, happiest life and also earn a lucrative income, because now more than ever, health coaches are in such high demand. I will say from personal experience, the day that I decided that I was finally pulling the trigger and signing up for school, I signed up with IIN. I got my health coaching degree first. It was the turning point in my life that allowed me to leave an 8-year career in cancer and genetics and finally follow my passion. So if you've been looking for a little momentum in the direction of your dreams, I would head over to the show notes, click on the link, and attend the open house. Like I said, it's a virtual webinar, and it may just be that all you need to do is sign up for class and you're already on your way to your dream life. So if this is you and it's speaking and resonating to you, definitely head over to the show notes, click on the link, and just listen in. All right, guys. Well, without further ado, today's guest is Dr. Taz Bhatia. She is certified in integrative medicine, holistic medicine, and pediatrics. She's a champion for women's health, and she believes we all can uncover our innate superpowers. She's the founder and CEO of Center Springs MD in Atlanta, and she's previously a professor in integrative medicine at Emory University. She's also a licensed acupuncturist and a certified nutrition specialist. Dr. Taz is truly an East meets West functional MD, and I'm so happy to have her on the show today. So with a warm welcome, Dr. Taz Bhatia, thank you so much for joining us. I know you have a limited amount of time, but it is just such an important topic, children's health and pediatrics. Let's get into it.
Hi, Kelly. So great to connect with you. I'm so thrilled and proud of you and of everything you've accomplished and everything that's coming up for you.
Oh, thanks. It goes both ways. I feel like, we met through Mind Body Green and have had, just the pleasure of cheering each other on from afar.
Yeah.
And it really has been such a pleasure. Dr. Taz is also a 3-time author, Superwoman RX, What Doctors Eat, and the 21-Day Belly Fix. And so we've both supported each other's book launches and really just, It's been fun to follow along online. Dr. Taz is also a mother, so she understands how to keep children healthy from her pediatric training, but also just being a mom. So today I wanted to have Dr. Taz on the show to talk about immunity in children, specifically in keeping kids healthy. I know it's questionable whether schools will start again in September. And if they are, if there's a different type of schedule and, just kind of that fear of bringing our kids back out into public and allowing them to play with other kids and what that looks like. So I figured I'd bring the expert on. So Dr. Taz, let's get into it.
Yes, let's do this.
So from your experience and medical training and understanding COVID and immunity, what do you think are some of the tips that we can start incorporating or tools that we can start incorporating into our children's lives to increase their immunity?
I think this entire quarantine and pandemic has been really interesting because if anything, it's forced us all to dial into the conversation and topic around health in a really serious way, not just something that's sort of, I'll get to it. And I think the same is true for our children. And what we're seeing makes a difference is really how their immune systems are functioning and if their immune systems are being given what it needs to help fight off not just COVID, but many of the other viruses out there. But in this case, we're the most worried about COVID. So what does that mean for a mom or for a parent out there listening? I think they really have to think through maybe a couple of key categories when it comes to their kids' health. And the root of the immune system in children and also in adults is the gut. I mean, it's kind of ground zero. And Chinese medicine teaches us that. Ayurvedic medicine teaches us that. Science has now proven it. We have so much great research on the microbiome and gut health and how it dictates so many different pathways in the body. But I think, for everybody out there, like really thinking through and being a little bit more observant of your child's digestive health. Do you have a child that complains about belly aches, belly pains, isn't using the bathroom every day, or is using the bathroom too much, or has reflux? These are all kind of your early warning signs that, hey, it's not just a gut issue, but their immune system may not be where you want it to be. So I think that's probably your starting point. I think the next place to go is food and nutrition. And I know you and I are both incredibly passionate about this topic, but it is, again, a fundamental. It's like you almost can't do everything else until you sort of get this where it needs to be. And understanding that, kids' foods today, and I know you talk about this all the time too, Kelly, but the kids, the food that our children are exposed to today is just not high quality and oftentimes filled with a lot of preservatives, additives, dyes, sugar. Sugar is rampant. It's everywhere. And so it's one thing to talk about it from a nutritional aspect, but now the conversation flips and we talk about it more from an immune aspect. We know that sugar weakens the immune system. We know that an overload of these dyes and preservatives and fillers and such, we know that that also triggers inflammation, which wears down the gut. So we know how these things now start to connect up together and play out when it comes to your child's response to COVID. And furthermore, the two of those, gut and nutrition, will dictate the deficiencies, your child may or may not have. So if they're low in vitamin D or if they're low in vitamin C or low in zinc, those have been game changers in the outcomes of COVID across the board, meaning, the people that have optimized levels of those particular nutrients, COVID is just another virus. It's not this devastating, diagnosis. But when you are low in those, then it impairs something called T-cell mediated immunity. And that makes it very difficult to mount the proper immune response to COVID. So I would say gut nutrition and the nutritional deficiencies that follow it play out in terms of what your immune system is going to do in a healthy child. And that's a conversation that may not be happening in your typical pediatrician's office, or even when you're thinking about immune support. But that's really a fundamental piece of thinking through how to keep your child healthy.
Already questions are popping up in my mind, not as a nutritionist, but as a mom, because, I am relying on Bash's pediatrician and, the functional MDs that I work with like yourself. But let's get into gut health a little bit, because I think early warning signs, you said, if they're not pooping enough or they're pooping too much, what should we be aiming for a day with our children when it comes to bowel movements? What would you consider normal? And then can we get into how, and if you're supplementing children in regards to probiotics or prebiotics in their diet?
Definitely. So, I mean, I think these are all great questions. So first of all, most children should be having at least one full, if not two full bowel movements a day that are easy. They shouldn't be disappearing for a long time, having trouble going, going in and out of the bathroom to go frequently. So they should be pooping at least 1 to 2 times a day completely and easily. And I think same thing with urinating. I mean, we don't talk about that as much, but so many children walk around dehydrated, drinking plenty of water throughout the day and going to urinate at least 4 times, 5 times per day. So those are some very general, and those are probably honestly across all ages. I would say from your toddlers all the way through your teenagers. So I think that's the frequency that I would look for. And then when it comes to supplementing, and that's a question I get all the time as well. With kids, we don't want to throw everything at them. First of all, they're not going to cooperate. And then secondly, they usually don't need a lot. And I'm always amazed by the body and how 1 or 2 things make such massive differences. When we're talking immune health, I would add a probiotic. I still believe in those. Every now and then you'll see a study come out that starts to knock them. But a high quality probiotic with the right strains of bacteria, and we can talk about that too in a minute if you want to, with at least 5 to 10 billion CFUs or colony forming units, is something that's going to help support digestive health. So that's one thing that I think can be universal and everybody, would benefit from. I think also vitamin D, so many children today, and it's actually an epidemic that I'm seeing, and I think it's going underdiagnosed. So many children today actually have, for other reasons, non-COVID reasons, they have fat malabsorption where they don't digest fats, they don't break fats down very well. And that issue, the reason I stumbled on it was the children that are having a lot of ADD, ADHD, dyslexia, failure to thrive, some of those kids. But here's how it plays into COVID. That fat is needed to help you absorb your fat-soluble vitamins like vitamin D and vitamin A, which are both so important for immune support. So for a lot of kids that we're testing in the practice, we're seeing low vitamin D levels. And I think it's critical to get those levels up by, first of all, making sure they're absorbing and digesting fats well. And then secondly, supplementing with roughly, 400 IU at a minimum of vitamin D. And for the older children, that way more, they can go up to 1,000 units of vitamin D per day. That is a level, though, that needs to be followed. So you could always start there, but then it does need to be followed by a physician to make sure you're not over supplementing that. So I think probiotics, vitamin D, to me, those are super important. Like, I think most people will benefit from those in this time of COVID. And then after that, there's some add-ons that have been specific to COVID. And those would be vitamin C, which we know is helpful across the board, but vitamin C, study after study, is coming out of China and other places where vitamin C does help with decreasing respiratory secretions and some of the sequelae of COVID. So that's one. Vitamin A and its ability to act as an antiviral and the immune support that offers, and then zinc. So those are some other ones that are add-ons. And then for years, Kelly, I've been telling moms in the practice, and actually we did this ourselves, and you have young kids, so you probably need this tip too if you don't already know it. But you'll find that the minute you send Bash off to, I don't know if he's probably not right now because of everything going on, but the minute they go to school or the minute they go to like a preschool program, they're bringing home every single virus in the world, and the whole house is getting sick and getting shut down. But there's some game changers that stop that and apply to COVID as well. And I've been talking for years about astragalus, which is a Chinese herb, and you can get kids to take it. You sometimes have to mix it in a little bit of applesauce or maybe their favorite juice or something along those lines, but that acts as an antiviral. It helps support T-cell mediated immunity, which is sort of the catchphrase for not getting COVID, or even if you do get COVID, for recovering very quickly from it. So that's one that I'm a firm believer in giving them in a season like we are having now. And the minute they look bad, sound bad, whatever it is, and increasing that to 3 times a day for a period of 72 hours. So those are probably my top supplements that I like using in children.
I love that. I have a vitamin D3 for Bash. That's definitely one of the supplements he gets from Genexa. They have a children's and an infant version, and I've been giving that to him since he was born. And it's something that we found to be like really successful for even just supporting his eczema.
Definitely, yes.
Which has been great. Can you talk about the probiotic strains and if there's a specific probiotic that you recommend? I think one of the hard things for parents, and I've heard this from my clients, I've experienced it personally, is what you were saying with astragalus, like getting your child to actually ingest it at a young age. What probiotics are you using? Is it powder form? Are you mixing it into something? Are you using like gummies? What's your preferred mechanism of delivery?
I think it depends on your child. Like, having seen so many children over the years, there are some that do not want to go near a powder, and there are some that will not swallow a pill. And it just really depends on who you're working with. So I have them all. We have liquids, powders, pills, and I believe we have a gummy as well. So we have them all to kind of cater to the type of child we're dealing with. Now, when it comes to strains and doses, I think that's the more critical information. And that's where, matching your probiotic and thinking through it is a little bit helpful. So let's start with very general rules. Very generally, when you read a probiotic and look at the label, you want to make sure they're very clear about what strains in particular are in there. And, they've sort of itemized out the strains, and then they've put how much of every strain in their source. And that's one quick scan of a label you can do to make sure it is a quality probiotic, because many probiotics are not high quality and they degrade down and they're not what they say they are. Then when we're looking at the strains for kids, I think a great sort of general rule, again, is having multiple strains of lactobacillus, which is a good bacteria that helps with conditions like eczema and allergies and asthma, but also helps support the immune system. And bifidobacteria is the other one. And the combination of lactobacillus and bifidobacteria help to suppress what I think is the epidemic amongst children, which is candida, an overgrowth of yeast in the gut, secondary to to all the sugar and all the additives and all this other stuff that most of them get, or even that we may have and just didn't realize we had and passed it on kind of in utero. So I think that combination, lactobacillus and bifidobacteria, are sort of like the power punch of probiotics, that kids need. And then again, dosing it in that 5 to 10 billion. Now, when it comes to pills, powders, chewables, gummies, I think you've got to decide what type of child you have and then look for a product that matches those specifications that we just talked to. So, Cubby, my son, will take pills without any problem. My daughter's pickier and she wants a liquid or a gummy, so it just really depends on your child. The goal is to make these things a consistent habit, because unlike medications, a single dose here or a short course there is going to be okay, but you really want to establish consistency with this stuff to make a long-term impact on their health.
Definitely. That's like the one that is a major takeaway for supplements in general, nutrient supplements. I find that so many clients they have a box of supplements. They're like, I've taken this for a little while. I'm kind of in the habit of taking that. And to get those stores up, you really have to be consistent for sure.
Definitely.
I love these tips. I think from astragalus to a probiotic to a vitamin D, those are so easy to add. And then, vitamin C from vitamin C rich foods, or, an easy like chewable is a pretty great call. So let's get into like the nutrition side of things and sugar, because you just mentioned that one of the biggest things that you see as a problem for children is yeast and candida. I am literally not surprised by this at all, because honestly, finding like non-sugar added or lower sugar pre-prepared foods for BASH has been one of the hardest things. Started meal prepping like never before, because it is, to have food available for your children that isn't full of sugar is really difficult. Everything fast is full of sugar.
It really is. And the problem, there's so many layers to this conversation, because, first of all, there's just the science and what it's doing to health. And, when we get a certain load of sugar, in through all these different foods, and then children typically gravitate towards fruit, right? So a lot of kids are eating a lot of fruit as well. And there's also this gene, MTHFR, that I think was at 40% of the population, but I have a feeling it's even higher now, which dictates a tendency towards candida. You put those three factors together and you really have kids walking around chronically inflamed. And sometimes it's just low-grade inflammation, that might not ever be picked up, or it's a little bit more obvious in conditions like asthma, allergies, eczema, or it's the behavioral component of what we're seeing. I mean, before COVID, the biggest pediatric public health crisis was their mental health. And candida is a part of that conversation because the gut-brain connection is so powerful. This is one I deal with at home, very clearly. And I can see the difference both physically and behaviorally, in my daughter when she's exposed to a certain amount of threshold because she has one copy of that gene and she just can't tolerate it. Whereas her little buddies and her girl group or whatever else can bake from here to eternity and be absolutely fine. And it's hard for her to wrap her head around that. So, so candida is a problem, in the sense of it triggering inflammation, in the sense of it wearing down the gut. And remember, when we have inflammation and we stress the gut and we alter the gut microbiome, we also impair the immune system. So these are the kids that are getting sick frequently. And then all of that plays directly into their behavior, their performance, their learning capacity, and so many other aspects of children's health. And it's hard as a parent to monitor this. I almost, Kelly, am like a little envious because I almost feel like it's easier where you are. Wait till they get to school and everybody is munching on this, or the gift is candy, or hey, you did this, we're going to have a party, and the party is like icing and cookies and ice cream. And what happens, the journey of that is that their palate completely changes and they no longer want your healthy food. And it's now a struggle at home to get their palate to readjust to a lower sugar, lower additive type food. And so this is something I see play out in my real life and definitely something I see play out in my exam rooms as well. And I think it's so hard for parents trying to do the right thing. So candida is rampant, and it's all the way from the little babies to our adolescents to our young college-age kids. And it is a problem for the immune system, for inflammation, for behavior, and for expression of so many different illnesses that are out there. And controlling it, the probiotics help. That's where that lactobacillus bifidobacteria combination is helpful. So that helps for sure. But ultimately, it's only going to help to the point that you can lower their sugar and artificial sugar intake, right? I mean, there's only so much all these things can do if we don't change kind of what's going in. So I think that to me is one of the greatest challenges for parents today, especially parents that know, right? When we don't know, we can't do much about it. We don't know any better. But when we know, I don't know how many mothers like I listen to every day, just wringing their hands of like, okay, why was this surprise in school today? Okay, or why did this happen to, like just trying to get a handle on this. And it's really hard. And I know it's hard to find food at your stage. And as they get older, it's going to be hard to manage it around their community. I feel like that's the harder part.
Definitely. I know that I'm in control right now, and I'm happy to do a little bit more meal prep and find the foods that I know are clean for BASH, whether that's like, Serenity Kids, or I'm making meatballs and like, steamed broccoli and doing all that type of meal prep. I have clients. I have so much empathy for the clients that are at the stage of junior high or high school. Mm-hmm. Or even when their kids are in like second and third grade. And it does turn into like the pizza parties are every single weekend. The cupcakes are every single weekend. And it's almost like the moms need to start banding together and saying like, we need to stop doing this. Like, and that, I think the hard part is then you're fighting up against people who are like, but this is how we celebrate. And this is how and I think that's really the conversation that needs to start to change, because if our celebrations are constant for everyone and every single thing that we do correctly, or that needs, that someone's getting accolades or whatever, we're basically eating sugar all the time.
Totally. And it affects their health. And now in the time of COVID, which is what you and I are concerned about as kids go back to school in the fall and hopefully, things open back up and and get some level of normalcy back, like I think these things are even more important. Like I meet parents who, there are two camps here in Georgia. I don't know what it's like in California, but there's a camp that has not left the house and there's a camp that does not care. But it's interesting. Both of those camps, like, I don't think they're dialed into, hey, these are some of the things to pay equal importance to, in terms of protecting your child's health and their immune system. So like, where's their sugar intake? What level of nutrient quality are they getting in their foods? Are they sleeping consistently? Like all of these things, I think are going to really, before they were passions for you and I, now I think they're necessities for every mom out there. Like these are not things to take lightly anymore. These are things that are going to make a difference in our collective health. And so I just think it's such an important thing to make everybody aware of.
Obviously, we know there's a lot of sugar out there and, maybe that's the stuff we can't always control. But what you mentioned are the controllables. The controllables are what nourishing foods we're feeding our kids at home, how they're sleeping, how we're testing them. Can we talk a little bit about how you strategize to feed your kids and what are some non-negotiable rules for you when it comes to protecting their health?
Absolutely. And I think, that's such a great question because we do want to have control. And so there are some just ground rules. So ground rule number one is, we don't have dessert every night. Dessert is like just a weekend issue. It's not an every night issue. Ground rule number two is we have to have at least 4 servings of fruits and vegetables per day. And I know it's supposed to be 6 to 8, but even getting to 4 can be incredibly challenging. And if we can't get there, then they do have to have a green smoothie, whether they fight me and do whatever they want, slam doors, it doesn't matter. But they have to have one green smoothie on any given day when they're not eating their kind of budget of fruits and vegetables.
I love that. I'm stealing that one.
So that's another one because I know I can get at least 3, hopefully at least 3 to 4 servings in that way. I think I've tried and now I'm in junior high, I've got junior high level kids, so it's a little bit more pushback, but we're trying. But it worked really well in preschool and elementary school where we would create a sugar budget. And so you would get a certain number of sugar dollars to spend every Friday, depending on how like Sunday through Thursday went. And so if Sunday through Thursday went really well and you didn't, spend your sugar dollars, then you would get like 2 or 3 sugar dollars to use on the weekend. And that would be like maybe your treats or, the birthday party or whatever else. So that worked for a while. And then of course they age out of that and that quits working. So there's that one. And I think after that is the amount of eating out that we do. And that's something we've really dialed into as a family. And even my husband is a part of that, that conversation where we don't eat out, even pre-COVID, we were not eating out more than maybe once a week. Because we felt like when we ate out as a family, or even when they were going out to eat with their friends, then it was a free-for-all, like everything's super tempting. So by controlling the amount of eating out, you sort of indirectly control things like sugar, fiber, fruits and vegetables, antioxidants, all of those type of things. So I think it doesn't have to be once or twice a week for any family out there, but I think bringing it down significantly. And I think the gift of COVID has been it forced everybody back into the kitchen again. So, hopefully, keeping those kitchen skills going, even as we maybe return to normal. So I think that's one way we continue to adjust their palate as they're exposed to other things outside. And it's been interesting to watch through COVID how both my children now, when they maybe go out with a friend or do something, they're like, oh, I can't eat any more of that. It's way too sweet, and they'll push it away, so they've also, on one hand, while they're overexposed, by putting some of these rules in, you control their palate to a certain extent. And then they start to self-regulate as they kind of come into their own. So all of these things do pay off, if we can, again, maintain consistency with it.
Absolutely. Always constantly offering and by example. I think that's the best. That's what I did with my husband when we first got together, and now he's really clean. And I think that's probably what my plan will be with my boys as well. So it's really, really great advice. I think, one of the things that you mentioned earlier on was really getting blood testing and optimized levels for children, which I'm sure the moms listening are like, what? My kids never had a blood test. The only blood test they ever got was their 1-year birthday to make sure they weren't anemic. And it was a small prick on a piece of paper. Can you talk about how we can start really optimizing levels for kids at a young age? Because, just mentioning that vitamin D can have an effect on mood disorders and all kinds of things like that. I would really love to know what your thoughts on how often and what are some of the markers we should be looking for with our kids.
Oh yeah. I mean, I'm still shocked. I'll meet a 15-year-old in the practice who's never had blood testing done. So I am incredibly passionate about checking numbers on everyone, all of us, and especially on our kids, because otherwise you just don't know and you can't formulate the right plan for them. Now, as a mom, I know nobody wants their kids to be stuck over and over again, but there's so many great options. So let's talk about frequency first. I think checking your children's labs at least once a year at a minimum every 2 years, I think is really important, because that's how you're going to catch shifts in their nutritional status, shifts in inflammation, which is a way to pick up on the fact that they may not be their healthiest selves, along with, as your children get a little bit older, picking up on the hormonal component of it. Because again, with the environmental load, we're seeing so many young boys that are, they have higher estrogen levels, so many girls that are having higher androgen levels. So I think it's really important to check every year or every 2 years for sure. I think the things to check are, and we can talk about that in a minute, would probably fall into 3 categories: nutrient numbers, hormone numbers, inflammation markers, maybe 4 categories, gut markers. So those 4 categories are where we want to go. But the fear of getting your child tested or having them go through a blood draw, I completely understand. The really cool thing that is out there now is that all of it doesn't have to be done by blood. There's a lot that can be done by urine. There's so much that can be done in stool. There's a lot that can be done with just a finger prick and not, this whole, ordeal to get a venous blood draw. And so there are a lot of very easy ways to get some of these things checked so that your children are on the right track. Now, I can break it down a little bit more. Nutrients, I would always check vitamin A, vitamin E, vitamin D, zinc, vitamin B, iron. Those are probably magnesium. Those are probably your go-to nutrients to always check. I think when it comes to gut markers, thinking through checking, where you are with candida, at least doing a celiac or a gluten intolerance test, at least once, and then maybe repeating it every 5 years or so, I think is important. Food allergy testing is probably important to do at least once, and then repeating it as your children transition maybe more into middle school or high school, because you can have shifts in what the gut can and cannot handle. I think those are really critical. Inflammation markers, I think, are so helpful. And we've been routinely checking those in practice, regardless. And they help with both tracking, like where's your, CRP, where's your homocysteine, where's your erythrocyte sedimentation rate. Those are really important numbers to know, because when children walk around with a lot of inflammation, it's important for us as providers to try to understand where that inflammation is coming from. So that's another one. And then for the children kind of entering those preteen, like your 4th, 5th graders or so, you want to start looking at things like estrogen and estrogen dominance and toxicity, and where they are with where the girls and the boys are with testosterone, with estradiol, with many of the androgens like DHT and DHEA, because we're seeing this really troubling shift where boys are getting estrogenized and girls are getting androgenized, and that's creating hormone imbalances for each gender, that are playing out later. So a lot of times it's not caught until, much later, until maybe even college or after that it's been going on probably since, 4th, 5th, 6th grade. So I think it's important to pay attention to all of that. And again, it doesn't always have to be a blood draw. There are other ways of checking these numbers.
I love it. I think you're opening the eyes of so many moms out there who, we just want to be advocates for our kids, and we take them to the pediatrician, and you just have those regular sort of appointments. How's everything going? Talk about some developmental milestones. There's like a physical check, height, weight. Okay, you're good to go. Vaccines, yes or no. Okay, you're out the door. And I think what you're talking about is really optimizing their health, optimizing their immune system, and making sure your kids are set up for the best future, which is all we want as moms. So, oh my gosh, I know that you have a huge client load today, and I just cannot thank you enough for spending the last half hour with us. This is really important to me because I'm pregnant, because I'm a new mom, but mostly because I think there's not a lot of information for moms when it comes to like deep diving the health of their kids. And Dr. Taz, you are just, a brain full of information that I'm so happy to share on the show today. So thank you for being here. I really, really appreciate you.
Oh my goodness, Kelly, I feel the same way about you. And there's a lot of work to be done here. I mean, we've tried to reimagine some of it at Center Spring MD with what the well check needs to really look like. That continues to be an ongoing conversation and innovation over and over again. But yeah, I feel pretty passionate about this. I mean, I'm fortunate that I can watch these kids as they walk through different phases of their life, but I'm really worried, right? So we'll continue to do this work, but thank you for having me. And I know I'll talk to you soon.
Okay, great. Where can people follow along if they want to learn more from you?
So you can go, I'm on Instagram, so it's Dr. Taz MD, and then my website is Dr. spelled out, DOCTOR, Taz, TAZ.com.
Perfect. Thank you so much for being here. You guys go give Dr. Taz a follow. She is, like I said, she's like a medical textbook of information that will support you to be the best parent you can be. So have a great rest of your day. And thanks for being here, Dr. Taz.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Be Well by Kelly. Please subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Learn more at BeWellByKelly.com and follow me on Instagram at BeWellByKelly. I would love if you picked up my books, Body Love and Body Love Every Day. They're sold on Amazon and at all major booksellers.